Hi, I'm Connor Heim. I'm not the best powerlifter, but I'm pretty alright. Today I wanted to talk about something I was asked to speak on, and that was cutting weight and kind of some of the dangers and some knowledge you might want before you consider doing it yourself. Now, those who know me know that I oftentimes make very severe weight cuts, or what some call death cuts, to make weight because I feel I'm more competitive at a lighter weight class. I think most people would feel like, hey, if I was a weight class lower, I would probably be a little bit more competitive. And that's true for just about everyone. But for me, I think I had my first bad experience and I wanted to kind of talk about it and, maybe provide some insight to those who are looking to make some pretty drastic cuts. My average cut is from about 198 pounds, somewhere between 198 and about 202, down to 183 pounds. So that's about 90 to 92 kilos, down to 83. And I do so because it's more competitive for me. But there may be more to it than that. What I kind of want to start with is I've made cuts like this before, multiple times. I did it last year at Junior Nationals. I did it last year at Worlds in Romania. And this is the first time at Powerlifting America Nationals that I did a cut like that, and it went horribly wrong. Now, what happened is I made the weight cut. I think my method of cutting weight was using primarily hot baths. So the sauna pass at my hotel cost money, and I didn't want to spend any because I'm broke. But the reason doesn't really matter. I got down to 183. I made weight, and then started what we call the recomp process, or the process where we have a certain amount of time before we have to start lifting, which for us is 2 hours. And now I want to get as hydrated as possible in that short time frame so I can perform my best. I think this is where I went wrong. I oversalted, meaning I took in way too many grams of sodium. I think based on what I had done, I had taken a product known as Trioral, which is a hydration packet, and has actually worked fantastically for me before in helping me get hydrated. And on top of that, I took, the standard Gatorades, or zero sugar Gatorades, because I'm healthy. But I took, for those who know that this was too much, but this is something that no one had ever said to me before. I've only ever heard, take in salt, cram the salt, get your water. And then on top of that, get salty carbs. You don't want to stuff up on food, but that's a conversation for another day. I took 2 Trioral packets and drank a liter of Gatorade followed by a liter of water and did that process maybe 4 times. So I probably took in for those who are wondering what that kind of equates to, that equates to I think somewhere in the ballpark of 16 to 18 Gatorades. Now, most of you would acknowledge that is way too much, but it's one of those things that if you're not told that, and you're only told cram the sodium, and especially after a death cut where you're cutting a significant amount of weight, you want to gain those pounds back. You want to get rehydrated. But no one ever really talks about what happens if you take too much. Well, I lived it, so I'm here to talk about it. So I actually was pretty well hydrated, and I felt pretty all right by the time squats came around. Not my best, but, 2 hours after weighing in, I wasn't feeling horrible. I was feeling pretty okay. And I, unfortunately had a horrible performance on squat, but that also stems from technical issues and going for PRs and a whole set of other issues. But it didn't affect me that hard, I think, on squat. Moving on to bench. Bench didn't feel great, but I also didn't feel like my energy was sapped insanely for bench. I undershot what I had done all time, which is not something I expected to do. I expected a total in the ballpark of 177.5 kilos to 182.5 kilos, which is around, I think, 190 or 390 to 400 pounds. And I expected to do that with not too much difficulty, but we only hit 172.5 kilos, which is 380 pounds, which, is not bad, but based on what I had done in training and going into the meet, could have hit a lot more. And it was at that point I started to notice like I'm starting to fade a little bit. By the time deadlifts came around, I was going into deadlifts thinking, I want to load the bar. I want to see if I can make like a big PR, break a junior national record, all that nonsense. But after my first couple of warm-ups on deadlift, I noticed that my legs were just gone. Like I could not get any movement out of my legs really. I could walk. I hit my opener, which was 305 kilos, so I think about 672.5 pounds. And it looked easier to those watching than it felt. I thought to myself, this was heavy. I was anticipating going for about 340 to 350 kilos, which is about 750 to about 770 pounds. And to have 672 hit me like that was really surprising. And so we took a minor jump on our second attempt to 317.5 kilos, which I think is 699.9 pounds, so essentially 700 pounds. And I missed it. I pulled it to my knees and just could not pull it anymore, and I put it down. Now that's weight that I, once really, really struggled with, but now is a weight that I could hit most days consistently if I go into the gym any given day. On a really good day, I could probably rep 700 pounds probably three or four times. And I at the time had no idea what happened. So I went back out and tried it for my third, and that went even worse. It barely broke the ground. So I capped off the worst powerlifting meet I've ever done, going 5 for 9, feeling terrible, feeling confused, wondering what went wrong, why do I feel so terrible? And so I finished up, told everyone their thank yous. I finished in fourth. And afterwards, went about the rest of my day. I went out to dinner with my parents, which was really nice. But that night, I noticed that I was starting to feel bad. Not just like, not a normal tired bad after a meet. I mean, like, I felt ill. And what I felt was a severe lightheadedness. And I felt like I couldn't really control I felt like I had no real strength to any of my limbs. And at that time, I took check of my heart rate and blood pressure. And my blood pressure was a little low, but my heart rate was a little elevated. My heart rate generally sits at around 60 to 65 beats per minute, and it was sitting at about 75 to 85, which I was like, all right, we just finished a meet. Maybe maybe it's not that bad. So we went home. I went to bed, or went back to our hotel room, went to bed, and I woke up a couple hours later, I think about two or 3 hours later, and I felt horrible. It was really, really frightening at the time. I had never felt that way before in my life. I checked my heart rate and my blood pressure. My blood pressure was very low, and my heart rate, while just waking up from sleeping, was 115. That was super concerning. So, fearing that I could have some very serious health complications, I went to the hospital. I went to the ER over in Reno, and spent, I think, the next 7 or 8 hours there. And when I got examined, they took some blood, did some blood tests, and told me that my potassium, magnesium, and sodium levels were all super low. Like, potassium and magnesium were like critically low. And that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because I had taken a bunch of it. But also when I got there, I had weighed in 8 or 9 hours earlier at 82.7 kilos, which is about 182.5 pounds. I weighed in at the hospital at 95 kilos. That is closer to about 209 pounds. And that was concerning. So I stayed there. After doing the tests, they put in a couple IVs and were able to supplement some of my missing nutrients. I think after I got there, through the time that I had to go to the restroom, I ended up dropping another 10 pounds while I was there while drinking nothing. And it was a scary situation. It genuinely felt like, before I got to the hospital, I felt if I don't go to the hospital, my heart's going to stop. And I talked to the attending nurse and doctor, and they told me whatever I did was putting a tremendous amount of strain on my heart and on my kidneys. And I explained what happened, and they essentially said, yeah, that'll do it. So I want to say, for people kind of considering cuts, cutting is not a bad thing. But I think finding resources, which is difficult. I've tried to find more helpful resources online without having to consult a specialist, which, if you're going to do those cuts, is something I now recommend. But there wasn't a whole lot of resources online for how do I rehydrate in 2 hours after I weigh in for a powerlifting meet, or just weigh in after 2 hours in general. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, there isn't a whole lot of resources out there. So I'm kind of here to say, yes, you can make those cuts, but you need to be a little careful with your hydration process. And especially if you're making a very extreme cut, you need to have a plan. Consult with your coach, talk with a doctor, talk with a physician, and say, hey, how can I do this? Do you have someone you can recommend that can help me with this? And go about it as safely as possible, because it's not only going to help you compete better on the day and perform better, it's going to help prevent any major health complications. Now, I made the decision after that it was time for me to move up to the 93 kilo weight class, which is about 205 pounds. And it's a tough pill to swallow. I think there's a lot of reasons why people want to stick in lower weight classes besides just being more competitive. I'm someone who has always wanted to have a good aesthetic, good look. Think like, you see some powerlifters are a lot bulkier, some look great, like Russell Orhe, for example. And I think that attachment to wanting to look great and look, much better can not only hinder your progress, but can actually keep you from reaching a healthy body weight and level of physicality. I think you shouldn't cut weight ever unless you're going for national titles or going for I won't even say national, I'll say world records. National records are they're great, but they're always going to get beat. If you really want to just say, hey, I was a national record holder at some point, go for it. But making a death cut just to chase one record that's going to get beat sooner or later, it's not always worth it, because you're not going to perform your best. I got attached to that 83 kilo class and ended up having my worst performance to date. So I think kind of want to close up with, if you're going to do cuts, big weight cuts, be really careful with it. Consult someone who knows a lot more than I do, and plan it all out beforehand. Be smart with it, and just be careful. Because for me, that was a really scary situation for me. I've never been the person to get quite nervous, but feeling your heart beating rapidly, but your pulse being unbelievably faint, it's not a good feeling. It just kind of makes you nervous a little bit. So I wouldn't recommend it for most people. I think if you want to go compete at your local or regional meet, do it at a healthy weight class that's natural to you. But if you are, going to make those cuts, just make sure to be careful about it. So, thank you all for watching. If you like the video, subscribe to my channel. I'm just here in my little voice acting booth because I do that too. But, gosh, I need a better camera. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, drop it in the comments, and I'll make sure to try and answer. And thank you.